Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Matt Olander, and I'm the co-founder of IX Systems. So I think I'm in a pretty unique position to tell you a little bit more about us, what we do, and how TrueNAS leverages the ZFS file system in order to protect your data. A friendly reminder: if the slides are too small, you can view the slide deck full screen with the little icon in your upper right-hand corner. If you ask a question during the presentation, I'll try to cover it as I go or at the end. If we don't get to your question, don't panic. We'll try to answer them all via email. I apologize. I'm not really much of a Mac guy. I'm a slightly Mac challenged. So give me a minute as I switch slides. IX Systems is a huge proponent of open source. So I've been using a FreeBSD based desktop for over 10 years. I'd like to brag for a minute about IX Systems. We're major supporters of multiple open source projects, including the FreeBSD project, PCBSD, our desktop and laptop FreeBSD-based distribution, Slackware, which a lot of people don't realize. We've been supporting Slackware almost since its inception, and of course, FreeNAS, the world's most popular open source storage platform. In fact, we're considered the FreeBSD company, and we've got more FreeBSD code committers probably than anyone other than Google. I think it's important to note that every employee here at IX Systems has an actual stake in the company. So that means that even a guy turning the screwdriver on drive trays on our production floor and back is heavily invested in making sure a high quality product is delivered to you and something that you'd be really proud to deploy. For years, we built custom server configurations that solve really complex industry problems. The solutions we build here are powered by open source technology that's behind the scenes of almost everything that you use on the internet. This gives us the ability to develop and deliver the TrueNAS unified storage appliance directly to you and sell it, directly. Our business has been built on creating a high quality reputation over the years, and that allows us to build long lasting relationships with technology innovators like VMware, Hitachi, Western Digital, Seagate. You've got them up here on your screen. The TrueNAS systems that we've built have found a home in many of our favorite companies, people like Sony, Disney, Mozilla, if you're using Firefox, and of course, many, many more. Here at IX, we believe that you should treat your employees like family and your clients like friends. So we've been building systems here in the heart of Silicon Valley for over 20 years. Our clients deploy in departments or around the world. So it really ranges across the board. We support user-friendly, industry-standard Ethernet, so you don't have to deploy a complex and costly fiber channel network if you don't have one already. TrueNAS is tested by the millions of FreeNAS users that prior to reaching you in the appliance. Our legacy vendors that we compete with have much, much smaller testing organizations because they don't have an open source project backing their product. We don't outsource our support, and the personnel here on site in San Jose, California are available to you 24 hours a day, reducing your deployment risk. When we built TrueNAS, we focus on performance and cost. So with TrueNAS, your data has the performance of an all-flash array or near to it, but it costs significantly less than our competitors. And just to point out that we never nickel and dime our clients. All the software and hardware components, including data protection, are available for one price at the time that you purchase the unit. So sometimes I get asked, "Hey, Matt, what's the difference between TrueNAS and FreeNAS?" Fair enough question, right? FreeNAS is the world's most popular open source storage project that we've been developing for years. We've got millions of downloads, and we found out over the years of doing this that while people just absolutely loved using FreeNAS, they needed a fully supported solution with enterprise-grade support behind it. And while we'd love to be able to support FreeNAS on everything out there, and we tried in the beginning, it just doesn't make sense. We found there are too many variables involved, right? You've got all the choices of motherboards, chipsets, HBAs, firmware, all the different hard drives. I mean, the combinations are practically endless. In order to provide the best experience with the absolute best software, of course, we needed the best appliance platform. So we spent over a year creating the TrueNAS solution for you. It works as an entirely unified platform, the hardware and software working together with, of course, with IX supporting both. And this gives you one throat to choke rather than dealing with multiple vendors for separate software and hardware. One of the many things that working the TrueNAS appliance allowed us to do over FreeNAS was things like obtaining industry certifications for platforms such as Zen and VMware. And of course, since we control the hardware platform, we can fine tune the software to increase the performance and reliability. In fact, that modular design that we came up with allows us to send out a pre-configured field replaceable unit, or FRU as they're commonly called, in the unlikely event you experience a hardware failure. So everything from our entry-level SLA to our 24/7 global support provides a support solution that should meet your needs and hopefully reduce downtime and virtually eliminate the need for complex troubleshooting, right? That same modular design allows you to go from a single controller to HA or highly available storage array by just adding the second controller to the existing appliance that you already have deployed. Since FreeNAS is so popular, it gives us a larger QA or quality assurance department than any of our competitors. So with each and every FreeNAS release, we've got literally tens of thousands of people that are deploying FreeNAS in various environments and reporting back any issues so that we can improve the quality and ensure stable releases moving forward. And we've got all of our TrueNAS models that we sell in the lab here. They're constantly undergoing testing and working through different scenarios. And this allows us to provide a much higher level of support since we can reproduce exact scenarios that you may experience in your network situation. Every network, of course, being different. Of course, almost every storage appliance comes with the front bezel, right? We took it a step further with our TrueNAS bezel by adding a global indicator alert light. I need to come up with a good acronym for that. You can see if there's an alert that needs your attention simply by walking by the TrueNAS appliances. Of course, TrueNAS, the unified storage appliance, provides the performance of flash, once again, closer to the cost of just raw disk, which is one of our design goals. And here I've got a slide showing you pricing compared to actual quotes we got from some of the other vendors out there. So you can see the cost per gigabyte. So in a nutshell, I mean, seriously, WTF here. It wasn't our goal to be the cheapest. It just turned out that we are inexpensive and cost effective. And one of the challenges we have here is a sales guy will send out a TrueNAS quote, and a client will call and ask us where the rest of the quote is or if it's correct. And my response to that is maybe you should be asking the other vendors why they're charging so much. And we think it's because they've got these huge multi-billion-dollar organizations. They have to answer to shareholders. They need to make a profit at any cost. And IX Systems is profitable from day one, and there are no investors or shareholders that we have to answer to. So we only answer to our clients. The hybrid version of TrueNAS provides flash performance and disk capacity. So if you do need the ultimate performance, we do offer an all-flash version called the Z50. With TrueNAS, the reads and writes use the faster flash, so they're not relying on the slower hard drives for your caching. And of course, we'll optimize the data before it's written, which saves space and lowers your storage costs. So many of our clients ask us, what's the difference between TrueNAS and some of our legacy storage competitors that we deal with? Well, I think with TrueNAS you've got a lot less cost and a lot less risk that you get with the other vendors. And like I said before, we take advantage of standard industry Ethernet 1 gig or 10 gig connections, and in fact you can bond them and treat a 10 gig Ethernet pipe as a 40 gig connection. So, and as we work with our network adapter vendor so that we can test the latest cards before they even hit the market. We've got a lot of our clients that use Unix, Mac, Windows. You've got mobile devices now constantly connecting at the office, and so of course TrueNAS supports NFS, AFP, which is Apple's protocol, CIFS, SMB for Windows sharing, iSCSI, and WebDAV. Our competitors require usually for you to dedicate storage to each protocol sometimes, and that can get quite cost prohibitive. Many of the other legacy vendors perform the storage optimization, such as a compression and deduplication, as a post process that definitely will impact your data access. And as I mentioned with TrueNAS, all of our storage optimizations are in line, so they just happen in real time, and this results in increased performance and no impact to your data access. The other guys will charge you for HA replication or many other separate features such as fiber. With TrueNAS, we never have a separate license for any of our features. High availability, replication, snapshotting, all of this is included. There's no cap on capacity, so that's all included at the point of sale. Some of the other guys use older architecture. Most of them do, and they rely on RAID to protect your disk and not your data. And that's a really important point. With TrueNAS, in addition to protecting your disk, your data is also protected by using the constant real-time checksumming. And this allows the ZFS file system to be self-healing. The storage capacity of TrueNAS scales by using IX Systems expansion shelves, and we've got various TrueNAS models here that'll support different numbers of shelves for any of the projects you can have. I mean, ranging from tens of terabytes to petabytes. Okay, let me give you several reasons that TrueNAS should be a primary consideration for you if you're looking for a storage project. As I've said, we've got better price performance ratio than our competitors. Let me share what I've heard from some of our clients. I had a client that was using an Isilon, it just wasn't cutting it, so they replaced it with the TrueNAS. And we blew Isilon out of the water on NFS performance for over 200 of the virtual machines. We were 90% less to acquire and support and cost. The Isilon had 120 72 RPM spindles, and we had 14 spindles. Same RPM, 7,200. So you're saving a lot on just drive cost alone. The EMC Isilon solution took up 16 U of rack space, and of course we took up 3 U. This gave you an 81% savings on the maintenance, power, and cooling costs. I've got another client that does content delivery, and a lot of it. They're looking to expand their in-house storage cluster, and they ended up getting another expensive EMC Isilon product, and it just wasn't cutting it. In their particular case, they were moving a lot of large video files, and so they called us over since they ran FreeBSD, and we came over to take a look, and it turned out in their particular use case of moving large video files that are being read sequentially, we slapped a TrueNAS box there, and it outperformed their Isilon by a huge margin, and of course for much less. Also, a while back, one of our technology partners, Violin Memory, they make a storage array that is just blazing fast but incredibly expensive. So they were looking for an appliance that could front end the flash array. That what good is that? All that performance if you can't get it out to your network. So they put a TrueNAS unit head to head against NetApp that they had on site, and once again, our IOPS just blew the NetApp out of the water, and while providing greater capacity at the same time as being a fraction of the cost of the NetApp unit. It's all about latency, am I right? So many times you'll find that accessing data over the wire on a TrueNAS can be faster than local disk. It's one thing to hear about that in theory and know that that should be true, but here we've got a unit that boots a couple of Windows VMs, and we actually tested it, and it was much faster than booting locally, and even opening apps was faster. Of course, we did have this unit on a 10 gig. I think it was our Z30, and but pretty amazing that you could actually boot an operating system and open applications faster over the wire than you could do it from your local disk. So this has huge implications for things like a VDI or desktops, deploying diskless desktops. With our read cache, or it's called an L2 arc in ZFS parlance, you can access your data more often. The read cache will actually heats up like hot fire, allowing your users access to mission critical data much faster than they would normally have it. In ZFS, we call the write cache ZIL. It stands for ZFS intent log or zero intent log. And this will improve your throughput and make the majority of your writes far more reliable. So let's say you lose power in the middle of a large data transfer, maybe a backup or disk dump. When the system comes back up, it replays the ZIL and commits the last writes to disk before it went down. So the hard drives end up being used exactly as they were designed to be used in a TrueNAS box, and that's just for holding the data that's not immediately in transit. So TrueNAS leverages the contributions, feedback, and widespread testing of the FreeNAS open source community to constantly improve the platform by rapidly introducing only the most stable updates and feature enhancements. And as I said before, we're huge proponents of open source here at IX Systems. We founded the company on that. Of course, we couldn't afford software licensing at the time, which was a huge help being able to use free open source software. And of course, that's also our development model. And we believe that more eyeballs on the code will result in a more secure, stable project. I mean, frankly, open source is just a faster development model. For instance, in our last FreeNAS release, which was 9.3, we had more than 5,000 people testing nightly alpha builds, right? So this is not something ready for production, although some of these people actually did use it for production, bless them. And they reported back bugs, they requested features, and this team of crazy pioneers helped us close hundreds of bugs in the space of just a few months. So no matter how large your QA or quality assurance department is, they just can't respond like that. Many of the public beta testers that use FreeNAS, they're doing it in pretty large, complex environments. I've got quite a few big universities, a couple government departments, a large television station, and even a biotech company. So it's just all over the map. And so the fact that we only update TrueNAS after FreeNAS means that it's been thoroughly tested and vetted by thousands of users around the world. So meanwhile, back in the evil corporate lair of overlords, small teams are literally worked to the bone on proprietary solutions. Apple, I don't want to name anyone, but I've seen it. And then the software often gets released well before the time. I mean, look at Windows 8, right? I wanted to like it, but I just couldn't. And this means you get slower release cycles, you get more bugs, and in the end, you get less security, right, because of a rushed release. And so it seems to me that companies like this, these large, Fortune 10, let's call them, are releasing what I would call beta software. They're calling it production ready, and they're charging a bundle for the privilege of you testing it. That's not fair. It doesn't make sense. So here I've got what the kids tell me is a tag cloud nowadays. And with TrueNAS, the initial investment that you make is simple. It's really easy to understand. I call it our upfront bare bottom pricing. And it just means you get all the features you need for your project at the same time, and they're always included. So there's no hidden costs. Our competitors often gouge customers on post-purchase maintenance fees, right? I think that story I mentioned earlier about replacing the EMC Isilon, the reason the client ended up coming to us was he had to get a quote on support for his rig, and it turned out replacing it with the TrueNAS was actually less expensive than the cost of support. And I don't remember what year he was in of the support, but it couldn't have been too far down the road. And so we won't do that. We've got straightforward support plans that'll keep you covered on both the hardware and the software while saving you money. This is a picture of me and my I think she was my 2-year-old daughter at the time. She's 3 now. You wouldn't know the difference. I don't know why they call it the terrible twos. It's the terrible twos, threes, fours, and fives. It looks like. On the right hand side of your screen, you can see what happens when one bit gets flipped. This is this is real. This is actual photo with 1 bit flip. That's what happens. And the problem is you don't notice until it's too late, right? Until you're down to your last copy of that photo and you realize that's the one that's been damaged. And so our mission here with FreeNAS and TrueNAS is to simplify storage and construct an enterprise level of quality that builds on smarter software like ZFS, which is the underlying file system, and really the heart of TrueNAS. And so one important part of this puzzle is dealing with that kind of bit rot. And really, it's the silent corruption of data on your storage media due to some random bit here or there getting flipped somehow, right? I mean, it could be a solar flare literally that does it. It's a real thing, and it probably affects you more than you realize. So you may think, no, man, that's okay. I've got backups. I've got RAID, right? And that'll help me avoid it. No, no, it won't. Like I said, you may think you have a good backup, but in fact, backups aren't intelligent for the most part. And what they'll do is they'll just back up the bad data, right? You've got for instance, this photo. What would happen is you take it on your camera. If you're smart, you take it on the camera. It gets automatically backed up to a FreeNAS. The FreeNAS gets backed up, or TrueNAS gets backed up to a cloud or some other tape archive. But if it was a bad bit from one of those transfers way back when I went from my phone to my home storage or my work storage, that's what got backed up to tape in the end, right? And so the backups ended up not helping. So before long, you go to restore, you rotate through all your backups, and you find your uncorrupted original is gone for good. Well, what about RAID? Well, RAID's great, but it won't construct the missing data. RAID works when a drive completely and cleanly fails. It doesn't fix data corruption. ZFS, on the other hand, actually repairs the silent data corruption when it occurs. It calculates the checksums of your user data and includes it with each write. So on a read, it'll use the information to identify the corruption and then only return your correct data, mark the block for later fixing during what we call a scrub process. And so during the scrub, every block is compared with its checksum that it got, at write. And if it's incorrect, it's repaired or discarded. The final piece of the puzzle was eliminating expensive RAID that's used in traditional storage and replacing it with high-performance software RAID. ZFS uses RAID Z, and that allows ZFS to avoid the hardware RAID write hole you're probably familiar with by using variable width stripes and writing the data in parity as a single atomic operation that doesn't signal completion until it's written. In the event of a power failure, you either have the latest data or you may not, but at least your disks are consistent either way. So you can't talk about ZFS without talking about snapshotting, right? For those of you that aren't aware, snapshots are instantaneous, just like a camera, an instantaneous copy of the state of your current file system. In ZFS on the TrueNAS box, they cost absolutely nothing. They take up no space, and they are instantaneous. Some of our competitors actually charge for the feature. I don't think that's right because you have to cripple the file system in order to make it go away. Now, you would think immediately this would be handy for data replication, backups, absolutely, but there's a bigger picture. For instance, in the PCBSD project, we've got who knows how many users, but it's downloaded hundreds of thousands of times just a week. And the way Chris Moore, the founder of the project, does his updating is by creating a snapshot of your workstation or laptop, and then mounting that snapshot, and then upgrading the clone. That's called a clone when you mount a snapshot and for read write. And then he actually does the intrusive software update into the clone, and that way if anything goes wrong you can always revert back to the original. This is also how we do it in TrueNAS. So snapshotting can be an amazing tool for software development departments, in addition to backups and a disaster recovery plan, because it can give you no risk updating, which is very cool. So snapshots. Once you go ZFS, you can't go back. Checksums. Remember I said bit rot, data corruption being the silent enemy. This is just, it's not something you have to worry about with ZFS. The first time you see the data corruption counter tick out of 0, you'll wonder how you survived, right? It's really, I mean, it's mentally, it's really a game changer to realize this happens periodically and sometimes on your critical files. So you paid a lot of money for your RAID protection, and all of a sudden a disk failure means that those dollars you paid to ensure redundancy go right out the window. You've got to wait for the disk to be rebuilt before you've got the HA config that you paid for, and then you got to pray that you don't have another disk failure during the actual rebuild, right? ZFS does not copy a full disk worth of data, only what you use, so you can quickly return to your HA config. Uh, we provide unlimited instant previous file version retention and restoration without intervention by administrators. So if you've got write permissions on the pool, you can do that snapshotting and restoring that I was talking about. You can mount a snapshot and browse through the files even. Your data it's protected against unintentional alteration with minimal storage consumption, and that's on demand or on a scheduled basis. So uh, we're trying to stick to the mission of giving you, spinning disk capacity at the cost and speed of flash. And we use that hybrid architecture to optimize performance and capacity by merging the multi-layer solid state cache, right, for your read and writes, and the high density spinning hard disk for the data at rest. Replacing your high speed spinning disk for performance with your solid state reduces your power consumption, and it can reduce your space requirements very dramatically, and of course improve performance at the same time. So we use multiple techniques and technology to reduce the volume of data that's actually being stored. Our storage optimizations reduce the size of IOPS that reach the storage media or the spinning disk, and this will increase performance while conserving space for additional data and hopefully keep your data growth under control. We call this process fast lossless intelligent compression, or FLIC. And so that's running real time inline at no CPU cost to you, right? I just coined that term right now. My marketing guy's staring at me. Every aspect of a TrueNAS system can be managed from a web user interface or CLI. We've also, you can automate it. We've also got the RESTful API. And this is volume creation, permissions on individual shares, or performing software updates. This can all be done without missing a critical step or encountering any failures. Many of the services that we provide have advanced configuration options that are available from the web interface, and also from it, the advanced menus. So the full power of the FreeBSD shell environment is there if you need it. It's just one click away through the UI. We've got a web shell, or through, you can SSH into your TrueNAS box and fire away. So we're trying to make the storage deployment easier than it's ever been before, but we don't want to get between you and the solution you need. So if you're the kind of person that likes to get it, lift the hood and get the wrench out, you can absolutely do that. Let me tell you a story. We've got a client, you may have heard of them. It's McGill University. They're a public research university up in Montreal, Canada. Started way back when, somewhere I think in the early 19th century. They've got thousands of students and thousands of researchers accessing a TrueNAS deployment that we did for them, and these guys are on it every single day of the week. And so, in order to make sure they had a bulletproof setup, we used two TrueNAS high availability configs, one for their computer science department, another for pure research. And both of these configs replicated to a third TrueNAS rig for disaster recovery, right? So the servers and some of the clients use NFS to access the first rig, while many of the faculty and students are using AFP from the Mac. So just all over the board, mixed environment, 3 rigs, different departments accessing. And they've got just a tad under a petabyte, and like I said, it's constantly in use. As you can imagine, it is a really big deal if things don't work on Monday morning when students and faculty come to the university. So you remember we talked about snapshots a little bit earlier. Well, this is where they can come into play. One day, the administrators realized their primary TrueNAS head had been scribbled on by one of the researchers' systems going rogue. I think it was a Linux system, if memory serves me correctly. So that system wrote all over the site-wide NFS server mount, and the students ended up being unable to log in come morning. So the administrators had to recover the data. They had to do it really quick. I mean, the pressure was really on. And I think they were very pleased to find out that it took us less than 5 minutes to restore a snapshot from their replication target and back to the production TrueNAS config. In fact, most of the time I remember was spent actually logging into multiple boxes on the university to go through their security process. They've got a very strict security process, and so what really could have been just a massive debacle was solved by using TrueNAS. And now we move into the realm of science fiction. Um, this is real. This is another one of our success stories. This is Planetary Resources, a little space asteroid mining company that's up in Seattle, Washington. These guys are going to tow asteroids into low Earth orbit and mine them with robots. No joke. Amazing guys. They only hire the best rocket scientists. And of course, they need to store a lot of information. So, for a point of reference, we've got the Hubble telescope up there right now, right? It generates about 120 gigs of data per week. Uh, I mean, not massive, but it keeps adding up year over year. I mean, where do you put this stuff? So, Planetary Resources knew that they were going to need a cost effective method to start collecting space data for their telescope deployment. Of course, in the future, they'll use their TrueNAS rig to gather telemetry for the mining the asteroids for rare minerals. I almost cut a deal to get 1% of the rare earth metals and minerals on the first asteroid, but we took cash instead just in case. Another one I've got for you is another sci-fi sounding story. This is a company called Council. This is a genetic testing laboratory that's a little south of San Francisco, and they're working, of course, with genetic data, and they need a huge amount of storage. The human genome, for instance, contains 1.5 gigs of data. And of course, nowadays you could store that on a few DVDs, but if you wanted to save the data of an entire organism, the whole biota, it would take over 100 zettabytes to store the info. Enter, of course, ZFS, the zettabyte file system, right? So Council knew they needed to store massive amounts of data to do their genetic testing and processing on the human genome. They wanted cost-effective storage solutions for the DNA analysis for their clients. It's a really cool story. They've got part of their build process online on their website. It's very interesting how they built a robot for the sequencing, and then the robot passes that to the systems that actually hammer the data. And then those systems log the test results directly to their TrueNAS storage array. And this allows the doctors and patients immediate access to the data from Council's web server cluster, which is reading the information directly from TrueNAS that the DNA sequencer saved there for them. So very, very cool setup. So here's a slide that covers our TrueNAS model lineup, and down on bottom, I've got some of our clients how they use the TrueNAS appliance. So you can see it's everything from archiving to database warehousing. Some of our competitors, I feel like they're just slapping their software on a white box commodity server, marking it up about 7,000%. They resell it with their logo painted on the front. And I wanted IX Systems wanted to provide a bit more value than that, right? So the TrueNAS appliance took years to design, build, and test. And we've been developing FreeNAS for years now, solely here at IX Systems. And it's been through many iterations to try to make it as perfect as possible for the world. And the appliance is custom designed and built to be the best platform in the world for TrueNAS, right? So even like I said, even that bezel will glow nicely if things are running smoothly, or otherwise. I wanted a Cylon back and forth on the bezel, but I got shot down on that. So I'm happy to have just the changing colors and glowing. So this entire line has been designed from the get-go for easy expansion, effortless management, and really painless serviceability, right? So with those FRUs, or field replaceable units, you can replace an entire head in the field in literally seconds, right? Okay, so here are a few questions that I've gotten. Uh, if I don't get to your question, we will respond in an email. So everyone can see, or will, if it's just a one-off, we'll respond directly to you. Does TrueNAS support non-disruptive upgrades? Absolutely. I mentioned that snapshotting technology and the fact that TrueNAS is modular in the hardware. So this means most of your parts can be replaced without requiring downtime, and the firmware can be upgraded or updated typically without an outage. Let's see. I need hundreds of terabytes of storage. Is this a use case for TrueNAS? Absolutely. We support uh, tens to hundreds to petabytes of storage, right? Does TrueNAS support drive sparing? Why, yes, we do, and I've heard this question before. Um, but remember, there's no need to have spare drives on a shelf if you can place them in the appliance, right? So in the event of a failure, the spare drive that's in the TrueNAS will take over for the failed drive, and only the active data is recreated. Does TrueNAS support VAAI? Yeah, this is another question I get a lot. VAAI, or vStorage API Array Integration, is a VMware technology that we introduced in FreeNAS 9.3. We tell VMware also that we're a thin provision array, and so we can support VAI's thin provisioning operations. So you can do warn and stuns. It's VMware talk, and the VMware snapshots are then converted to ZFS snapshots. So yes, we speak VMware, and of course all these capabilities are in my next release of TrueNAS, coming out next month if things go well, or soon, coming soon, as they say. And running out of time here. Okay, so here is a slide with a few resources if you need them. And of course, we'll send you a copy of the TrueNAS data sheet, and I think this presentation, right, Gary? And that'll provide you with all the details you need, and hopefully a little extra. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to this.